I stood there, clutching my cheap purse, my cheeks burning so hot I thought they might actually catch fire. 200 people were laughing, and they weren't laughing with me. They were laughing at me. My aunt lowered the microphone, a smug smile plastered on her face, waiting for the applause to die down after her little joke about my life as a single mother. I looked for an exit. I just wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. But before I could take a single step, a hand slammed down on the head table. Hard. The room went dead silent. It was the groom. He stood up, his face pale with rage, and grabbed the mic from my aunt. He looked straight at me, then at the silent crowd, and said the 7 words that would tear this family apart and put it back together in a way none of us expected. "You're laughing at the woman who saved my life." To understand why that moment shattered me, you have to understand who I am in this family. I'm Sophia. Poor Sophia. That's actually what they call me. Not to my face, usually, but I hear it. I see it in the pitying glances at Thanksgiving, the way they talk about my struggles like it's a disease I caught. I became a single mom at 32. It wasn't the plan. Nobody writes abandoned with a toddler in their high school yearbook. My husband left when our daughter, Maya, was barely walking. He didn't just leave. He vanished, taking our savings and my sense of security with him. I was left with a mortgage I couldn't afford, a career that had been on pause, and a broken heart. My family, well, they're traditional. And by traditional, I mean judgmental. To them, my situation wasn't a tragedy. It was a failure of character. I remember my uncle telling me, "Well, Sophia, you always were a bit too independent for your own good. Men don't like that." As if my independence was the reason I was now working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. The last 8 years have been a blur of survival. I worked days as a receptionist and nights freelance writing, just trying to give Maya a normal life. I missed family vacations because I couldn't afford the plane tickets. I drove a 10-year-old car that rattled when it idled. And every time I showed up to a family event, I felt like I was walking into a courtroom where the verdict had already been read, guilty of being a mess. But I kept my head down. I smiled. I swallowed my pride because I wanted Maya to know her cousins, to have a sense of family. I told myself their judgment couldn't hurt me if I didn't let it. I was wrong. The invitation arrived 3 months ago. Heavy cardstock, cream-colored with gold foil lettering. It was for my cousin Jessica's wedding. Jessica is perfect. You know the type. Never a hair out of place, went to the right college, married the right man. And this wedding was going to be the event of the decade. The groom, Michael, was a bit of a mystery. He was new money, incredibly successful in tech, and treated Jessica like royalty. The family was over the moon. Finally, a connection to real wealth. My aunt, Jessica's mom, was practically floating. I debated not going. The dress code was black tie formal, and my budget was Target clearance rack. But Maya begged me. She wanted to see the princess wedding. So I saved. I picked up extra shifts. I found a dress at a consignment shop, a simple navy blue gown that I prayed didn't look as old as it was. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with group chats I wasn't part of and pre-wedding brunches I couldn't afford. But I focused on the day itself. I just had to get through 6 hours. 6 hours of smiling, eating chicken, and dodging questions about why I was still alone. I arrived at the venue feeling like an imposter. It was a sprawling estate with manicured gardens and waiters in white gloves. My Honda looked like a rusted tin next to the sea of luxury SUVs in the parking lot. I took a deep breath, checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, and whispered to myself, "You are strong. You are a good mother. You can do this." The ceremony was beautiful. I cried a little, mostly because I'm a sucker for vows, even if I don't believe in them for myself anymore. But the reception, that's where the air changed. I found my table, table 19. It was in the back near the kitchen doors. The singles table, or as I realized looking around, the misfit table. Me, an eccentric elderly neighbor, and 2 teenagers who clearly didn't want to be there. Meanwhile, the rest of my family sat at tables 1 and 2, right by the dance floor. It stung, I won't lie, but I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to make conversation with the neighbor. Then, the speeches started. First, the best man, funny, charming. Then the maid of honor, tearful, sweet. Then, my Aunt Linda took the mic. Linda loves a spotlight. She started talking about how proud she was of Jessica, how Jessica had done everything right. She went on about the importance of choosing a partner wisely, of building a stable foundation. And then her eyes drifted to the back of the room, to table 19. You know, she said, her voice amplified across the silent hall, we all worry about our children. We worry they might end up lost, like poor Sophia back there. Every head turned. 200 faces swiveled to look at me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I mean, we love her, Linda laughed, a dry, cruel sound. But let's be honest, Jessica, you've saved us from having 2 cautionary taleys in the family. At least one of you knows how to keep a husband. The room erupted. It wasn't a polite titter. It was laughter, belly laughs. My cousins, my uncles, people I grew up with, they were howling. It was as if my pain, my struggle, the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering how I'd buy groceries, it was all just a punchline to them. I couldn't breathe. The shame was a physical weight crushing my chest. I grabbed my purse. I needed to run. I pushed my chair back, the scraping sound lost in the laughter. That's when the noise stopped. Whatever the groom, Michael, had done, it silenced the room instantly. I froze, half standing. Michael was standing at the head table, his hand gripping the microphone so hard his knuckles were white. He wasn't looking at his bride. He wasn't looking at Linda. He was looking at me. That's enough, he said. His voice was low, dangerous. Linda looked confused. Oh, Michael, lighten up. It's just a little family roast. It's not a roast, Michael interrupted, his voice rising. It's bullying, and I won't have it at my wedding. He stepped out from behind the table and started walking. Not toward the dance floor, but toward the back of the room, toward me. The silence was so thick you could choke on it. You all think you know Sophia, Michael said, walking past the stunned guests. You see a single mom, you see someone who struggled, you see a cautionary tale. He stopped right in front of table 19. He looked at me with eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years, respect. And then I recognized him, not as the wealthy tech mogul in the tuxedo, but as the scrawny, terrified kid I used to see at the library where I volunteered 15 years ago. 15 years ago, Michael said to the room, not taking his eyes off me. I was 17. I had run away from an abusive foster home. I was sleeping in my car. I was starving. I had no money, no family, and no hope. The room gasped. Jessica looked horrified. She clearly didn't know this part of his story. I used to sit in the public library because it was the only warm place, Michael continued. And there was a young woman there. She was just starting her own career. She didn't have much money herself, but she saw me. She didn't judge me. She brought me sandwiches every day. She stayed late to help me with my college applications. Tears pricked my eyes. I remembered that kid. Mikey. I never knew what happened to him. When I got into college, Michael said, his voice cracking, I couldn't afford the deposit for the dorm. If I didn't pay it, I lost my spot. I was going to give up. But this woman, she gave me a check. It was for $500. Later, I found out it was her entire rent money for the month. She risked being evicted so a stranger could have a future. He turned back to the frozen head table. That woman was Sophia. Sophia didn't make bad choices, Michael said, his voice ringing with authority. She made the most noble choice a human being can make. She chose kindness when she had nothing. I am standing here today, rich, successful, happy, entirely because of her. She is the most successful person in this room because she has a heart none of you deserve. He turned to me and hugged me. It wasn't a polite hug. It was a desperate, grateful embrace. Thank you, he whispered in my ear. I never got to say thank you. When he let go, nobody laughed. My Aunt Linda had sunk into her chair, her face a mask of mortification. My cousins looked at their shoes. The shame had transferred. It wasn't on me anymore. It was on them. The rest of the night was a blur. Michael insisted I move to the head table. He sat me right next to him, displacing a very confused groomsman. People who had ignored me for a decade suddenly wanted to buy me a drink. I always knew you were special, Sophia, one uncle lied. But I didn't care about their validation. I looked at Michael, laughing with his bride, and I realized something. My worth wasn't defined by my bank account or my marital status. It was defined by the seeds I had planted years ago, seeds I had forgotten about, that had grown into forests. I left early that night, not because I was ashamed, but because I was done. I realized I didn't need their approval. I drove my rattling Honda home, kissed my sleeping daughter, and for the first time in years, I felt rich. They laughed at me for being a single mom. They thought I was empty, but they didn't know I had been pouring myself out to help others my whole life. And sometimes, life pours it back just when you need it most. If you are struggling today, if you feel unseen or judged, please remember this. Your current situation is not your final destination, and your value is not determined by the people who can't afford to see your worth. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have stayed at the head table, or would you have walked out the moment he defended you? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.